The limousine rolled slowly through the long driveway of the grand mansion. Ryan Cole, a young billionaire who had just returned from years abroad, leaned back in the leather seat, the gold-plated watch on his wrist glinting in the sunlight. Everything about his life screamed success: money, power, influence. He expected the usual reception, servants bowing, champagne ready, his father waiting with a proud smile. But as the gates opened and he approached the main house, something felt off. The garden was overgrown. The marble floors were dusty. And from the corner of his eye, Ryan saw a shocking scene that made him freeze in disbelief. There in the hallway stood Maria, the family's longtime maid. But she wasn't doing the usual sweeping or dusting. She was standing over a man hunched beside a bathroom, scrubbing a dirty toilet. And that man, Ryan's father, what looked defeated. Time seemed to stop. Ryan blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. His father, once the powerful patriarch of the Cole family, the man who had built an empire with his bare hands, was kneeling on the floor, scrubbing a toilet under the instructions of the maid. What's going on here? Ryan's voice trembled, a mixture of shock and anger. Maria looked up, calm but firm. Sir, he refuses to follow rules without supervision. I'm only helping him learn discipline. Ryan's face burned with disbelief. Discipline? This is my father! How dare you! But before he could finish, his father slowly looked up. His eyes were tired, weighed down by years of pride, mistakes, and regret. He didn't say a word. His silence spoke louder than any defense could. Ryan had returned from the U.S., expecting the comfort and luxury he'd left behind. He had worked hard to become the youngest billionaire in the tech world, accumulating wealth, power, and respect. But nothing could have prepared him for this. His father, the man he had always idolized, was humbled in a way Ryan had never imagined. And the maid, the woman who had always seemed quiet, unassuming, now had authority over the very man who had once ruled this house. For the first time in his life, Ryan felt small, not because of wealth, but because of reality. Power could be taken away, pride could be shattered, and respect had to be earned, not demanded. He stepped closer, his footsteps echoing across the empty hallway. Dad, what happened? Why are you... His father didn't answer. Instead, he kept scrubbing, his hands raw from cleaning, his posture humble. Ryan's anger began to mix with confusion, then guilt, then a flicker of fear. Maria spoke again, her voice calm but with authority. He has been avoiding responsibility for years. I only stepped in because someone needed to guide him. If he refuses to learn, he must face the consequences. Ryan's mind raced. How could his father, once the man who taught him to dream big and aim higher, end up like this? Years ago, Ryan's father had been the pillar of the Cole family. Strong, ambitious, sometimes harsh, but always respected. He taught Ryan to be ruthless in business, to fight for every advantage, to never let anyone look down on him. But over time, his arrogance grew. He began mistreating the people around him, employees, friends, even family. He believed money and power could buy respect and obedience. Maria had witnessed it all, the small injustices, the arrogance, the neglect. And she decided to teach a lesson, not only to the father, but also to the son, who had inherited the same pride. Sometimes, Maria had whispered to herself years ago, the ones with power forget what it means to serve. They need to be reminded, humbly. And now, standing in the hallway, she was doing exactly that. Ryan's chest tightened. Dad, how could this happen? You're supposed to be powerful, his father finally whispered, voice low, almost ashamed. Ryan flinched at the tone. His father had never spoken like this before. The pride, the confidence, the authority, all gone. Replaced with humility. Maria interrupted gently but firmly. Sir, I'm not here to humiliate you. I'm here to help you regain respect. The kind that comes from hard work, not fear or wealth. Ryan's mind spun. Everything he had valued, money, success, influence, suddenly seemed hollow. He realized he had never truly understood respect. He had earned wealth, but had he earned love? Trust? Humility? Ryan took a step back, his heart pounding. He had returned home expecting admiration. Instead, he faced a painful truth. His family's foundation was broken, and the one person who could help rebuild it was standing silently before him. Maria, the maid who had seen more wisdom in her years than anyone else in that house. I need to understand, Ryan whispered. Maria nodded. Then you will. But first you must watch and learn. Actions speak louder than words, young master. And your father, he will only rise if he's willing to start from the bottom. Ryan's hands shook. His father's silence, Maria's calm authority, the stark reality of the mansion. It was more than a shock. It was a lesson he had never expected to learn. The mansion was quiet now, except for the faint sound of water dripping and Maria's calm instructions. Ryan sat on the staircase, stunned, trying to make sense of the scene he had just witnessed. His father, once a man of unshakable pride, was kneeling on the floor scrubbing a toilet. And the maid, Maria, seemed to carry the kind of authority that no money, no education, no status could buy. Ryan's mind wandered back to his childhood. His father, Mr. Cole, had been a force to reckon with, ambitious, controlling, and brilliant. He built a tech empire from scratch, starting in a small, dusty office with nothing but a vision and unrelenting drive. But along the way, he became proud. Too proud. Arrogance replaced humility. Employees feared him, friends avoided. Him and even his family felt the weight of his temper. Ryan, growing up in this environment, learned to mimic his father's intensity, ambition, and ruthlessness. Yet wealth couldn't fix character. Mr. Cole began to rely on fear, not respect, to maintain his empire. Mistakes piled up, bad business decisions, lost contracts, and eventually a scandal involving misuse of company funds that shook the family's reputation. The very foundation of the Cole family started to crumble. Investors pulled out, employees resigned, and Ryan, who had just begun to build his empire abroad, watched helplessly from afar. Maria had been with the family for over 15 years. To outsiders, she was just the maid, quiet, diligent, always in the background. But in reality, she had been quietly observing the cracks in the family's foundation for years. She had seen Mr. Cole's arrogance, his pride, and how it affected Ryan. When the scandal hit, Maria decided that the family needed a lesson in humility. Sometimes the people we love the most need to learn the hardest way, she whispered to herself. And so she began her plan, gradually guiding Mr. Cole back to humility, teaching him that true respect doesn't come from money or fear, but from patience, service, and understanding. Ryan's thoughts returned to the present. He had always believed that wealth and success were the ultimate measures of a person's value. Seeing his father humbled, kneeling under the guidance of Maria, shook him to the core. "Dad, how did it come to this?" he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. His father finally spoke, voice low, almost apologetic. "I forgot what it meant to serve, Ryan. I thought power meant control. I thought respect came from fear. I was wrong." Ryan felt a pang of guilt. All these years, he had chased the same illusions, believing money and influence were everything. And now, witnessing his father's humility, he realized that true power came from character, not wealth. Ryan stood up, stepping closer to his father and Maria. His voice trembled, filled with anger, confusion, and the beginning of understanding. "Maria, why are you doing this?" "This is my father!" Maria looked at him calmly. "Sir, he is still your father, but he must remember what it means to be human. To serve, to respect, to rebuild trust. Humility is a hard lesson, but it's the only lesson that lasts." Ryan's father spoke, his hands raw from scrubbing. "Maria, I let my pride blind me for decades. I neglected my family, my responsibilities, my own heart. Now I must start again, from the ground up." The words hit Ryan like a punch to the chest. He realized that his father's mistakes weren't just about business. They were about life, love, and the human connections he had taken for granted. Over the next few days, Ryan observed Maria guiding his father through daily chores. Cleaning, cooking, managing small household tasks. She treated him with firm kindness, never mocking him, always instructing. And slowly, Ryan noticed a transformation. His father's back straightened. His eyes regained a spark of humility and wisdom. He no longer relied on arrogance. Instead, he worked alongside Maria, learning lessons that no school or business seminar could teach. Ryan, witnessing this, began to reflect on his own life. He remembered the arrogance he had carried abroad, the people he had looked down upon, the values he had ignored in the pursuit of wealth. "Maria, you're teaching him, but I think you're teaching me too," Ryan whispered one evening. Maria smiled softly. "That's the purpose, young master. Wealth is fleeting, but respect, humility, and kindness, they last forever." One night, Ryan found his father quietly sitting on the veranda, looking at the stars. He approached slowly. "Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. For not being here. For following your footsteps without understanding them." His father smiled, a mixture of pride and regret. "Ryan, it's never too late to learn. Money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy character. You must build yourself." Ryan nodded, tears welling up. He understood now. The world he had conquered abroad meant nothing if he didn't conquer himself first. And through Maria's guidance, both father and son began to rebuild their lives, not with wealth, but with wisdom, humility, and respect. The next morning, Ryan walked into the main hall to see his father and Maria working side by side. His father paused, looked at him, and nodded. "Ryan, today, you will truly see what it means to respect life, not just wealth." Ryan's heart pounded. He knew this was only the beginning. Something bigger was about to happen, a lesson that would change their family forever, and maybe even the life of the billionaire himself. Ryan Cole stood silently in the grand hallway of the mansion, staring at a sight he could hardly comprehend. His father, once the proud and commanding patriarch of the Cole family, was carefully following Maria's instructions, performing chores with patience and humility. The man who had taught Ryan to chase wealth above all else was now kneeling on the floor, scrubbing a toilet, his posture humble, his eyes cast downward. For the first time in his life, Ryan realized that true respect and power could not be bought. They had to be earned through humility, empathy, and character. He took a hesitant step forward, his eyes fixed on the scene. The mansion, which had once represented power, pride, and unshakable authority, now felt empty of all the pomp and grandeur he had expected. The silence of the house was heavy, almost deafening. He could hear only the soft scraping of the mop against the tiled floor, the occasional drip of water, and the calm voice of Maria guiding his father with firm yet gentle words. Maria turned to him and spoke, her tone soft but commanding. "Ryan, it's time you understand the true meaning of respect and responsibility. What you see here is not punishment, but a lesson in humility, in life, in the kind of leadership that lasts beyond wealth." Ryan's father looked up at him then, his eyes tired but filled with a quiet strength. "I let pride blind me for decades," he said slowly, almost whispering. "I lost respect, love, and trust because I believed that money could replace character. Today I start again from the bottom." Ryan's chest tightened. He had thought he understood life. He had thought his years of success abroad made him wise. But standing there, watching his father humbled, he felt a wave of guilt and shame. All the money, the achievements, the accolades he had collected in foreign lands suddenly seemed meaningless. He realized that true wealth was never counted in dollars. It was measured in respect, humility, and integrity, qualities he had overlooked in the relentless pursuit of power. Maria stepped closer and handed Ryan a mop. "You will learn too," she said quietly. "Step forward, or you will never understand the depth of what you have. Been blind to all these years?" Ryan hesitated. The thought of kneeling and scrubbing a floor, something so mundane and beneath the world he had built abroad, made him angry at first. But then, as he looked at his father, he saw the humility, the quiet dignity, the slow transformation of a man who had once commanded the world, yet was now learning to respect life's smallest tasks. He took a deep breath and knelt, his hands trembling as he held the mop. The water splashed, and his movements were awkward and clumsy. He cursed softly under his breath, but forced himself to continue. As he scrubbed, he began noticing the rhythm, the effort, the satisfaction of completing a task with patience and focus. For the first time, he felt a connection to the work itself, to the people who labored daily without recognition or wealth. The realization struck him. Every task, no matter how small, deserved respect. Every person, no matter their status, deserved acknowledgement. And pride alone was hollow without humility to balance it. His father watched him silently, a faint smile of approval on his face. It's not about the task itself, Ryan, he said gently. It's about understanding that every role has value. Every person deserves respect, and that arrogance and pride without compassion are empty. Tears welled in Ryan's eyes. He remembered the countless times he had belittled employees abroad, dismissed colleagues' ideas, and assumed that his wealth automatically demanded admiration. He realized with a shock how many relationships he had damaged through arrogance, how much respect he had failed to earn because he had relied only on fear and power. Maria's guidance and his father's transformation were teaching him a truth that no university, no business deal, no overseas accomplishment could ever provide. The true measure of a person is in their character, not their bank account. Then Maria handed him a small envelope. Ryan opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten letter from his father. Ryan, wealth and power are temporary. Humility, respect, and understanding are forever. If you wish to truly inherit the Cole legacy, you must learn these lessons first. Dad! Ryan's hands shook as he read the words. The depth of his father's message struck him like a physical blow. He understood now that money could build empires, but character built legacies. His father's silence, his father's willingness to learn, and Maria's careful guidance were more powerful than any business, lesson, or financial success. Maria's voice broke his thoughts gently. True wealth is not counted in dollars, Ryan, she said softly. It is measured in integrity, humility, and respect. Only when you embrace these qualities can you truly lead and live a fulfilled life. In the following weeks, Ryan worked alongside his father and Maria. The mansion transformed, not in its physical appearance, but in its atmosphere. It became a home filled with respect, patience, and love. Former employees returned, neighbors were treated with kindness, and Ryan learned to balance ambition with humility, power with compassion, and leadership with empathy. He watched his father patiently instruct employees, neighbors, and even the youngest members of the household, showing them that every task had value, no matter how menial it seemed. The lessons of service and humility that had once humbled him now became the foundation for rebuilding the family's reputation, and more importantly, their bonds. One evening, after a long day of work, his father looked at him with a proud but gentle smile. Son, you've learned what I never fully understood. Respect is earned, not demanded. True leadership comes from service, not authority. Ryan nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I finally understand, Dad. Money can be gone tomorrow, but respect lasts a lifetime. Maria watched quietly, pride shining in her eyes. And now you are ready to carry this lesson forward, not just for yourself, but for everyone whose life you touch. Months passed, and the mansion became alive with laughter, work, and purpose. The family no longer relied on hierarchy or fear. Ryan and his father worked side by side, teaching humility, service, and respect to everyone who entered the household or their business. A neighbor approached Ryan one afternoon, curiosity in their eyes. How did all this change happen so quickly? Ryan smiled, glancing at his father and Maria. Sometimes, life humbles us in ways we never expect. Only then do we truly learn what matters. His father added, money builds buildings. Character builds families. Maria nodded. Humility builds humanity. Ryan finally understood. True wealth wasn't in his bank account. It was in the lessons he had learned, the respect he earned, and the life he chose to live. He had been given a rare gift, the chance to witness the humbling of a man he idolized, the guidance of someone wiser than he realized, and the ability to rebuild himself into someone who valued integrity over influence. He reflected on the day he had first returned to the mansion, expecting admiration and luxury. Instead, he had faced shock, silence, and the sight of his father humbled by a mop and a bucket. That day had broken his ego, but in that breaking, it had rebuilt him. He had learned that money could buy comfort, but only humility could buy respect, peace, and a meaningful life. Ryan had once thought of himself as unstoppable, untouchable, and wise. Now, kneeling on the floor, scrubbing beside the father he had idolized, and the woman who had taught him his greatest lesson, he realized that true strength was measured not by power, but by the courage to serve, to learn, and to respect. If this story inspired you, like, share, and subscribe. Remember, wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the respect, humility, and love you show to others. Comment respect if you believe in the power of character. The richest people aren't those with money. They're the ones who understand the value of humility and humanity.